How could you do this to me, John? Those words still echo in my mind, as vivid as if they were just spoken, even though more than a year has slipped by. I can still picture myself there, 6 months pregnant, standing in the narrow doorway of what was supposed to be our home, my hands trembling with a storm of anger and disbelief so intense I could barely breathe. John stood across from me, his arms folded tight across his chest, his face an empty mask of indifference, as if I was the one causing a scene, as if this was all some inconvenience for him to brush off. That was the instant everything I believed about us, about our future, shattered. Every moment we'd shared, every whispered plan for our family, suddenly seemed hollow. It was like waking up from a dream and realizing nothing was real. My name is Melissa Harper. I'm 32 now, and the reality of single motherhood is my everyday life. I have a beautiful, bright-eyed 1-year-old daughter named Emma, who is both my reason for getting up each morning and the anchor that kept me steady through the storm. My life bears little resemblance to the one I mapped out in my 20s, but in ways I never expected, it's richer and more authentic now. Just over a year ago, betrayal didn't just knock on my door. It barged in, upended my world, and left me gasping for air, forced to rebuild from the wreckage while preparing to bring Emma into the world. The weeks after John left are a blur of pain and numbness. I remember the suffocating loneliness, the way I felt like I was underwater, unable to catch my breath no matter how hard I tried. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw John's face, heard his voice replaying those cruel words in my head. I'm not attracted to you anymore, Melissa. Look at you, you've let yourself go. The venom in his voice, the coldness in his eyes. Those memories became daggers, cutting deeper each time I relived them. It's astonishing how someone's words can take root in your mind and poison even your most private moments. But the pain didn't stop with John. Julia, my so-called best friend, became a ghost in my life. I never confronted her, never gave her the satisfaction of seeing my heartbreak. Instead, I erased her existence from my world, deleting her number, tossing out old photos, trying to scrub away every trace of our friendship. I learned the hard way that sometimes the deepest wounds come from the people you trust the most. I faced the last months of pregnancy alone, piecing together a life from the fragments left behind. John didn't just walk out on me. He abandoned Emma before she took her first breath. Not a single call, message, or ounce of support. He vanished as if we never mattered at all. My mother tried to fill the void, doing her best to be strong for both of us, but I could see the pain in her eyes every time she looked at me. She wanted so badly to fix things, to make it all better, but this was a wound that only time, and my own determination, could heal. I became an expert at wearing a brave face. For everyone else I was composed, moving forward. But at night, when the world was quiet and Emma kicked softly inside me, the facade crumbled. I'd cry until there were no tears left, until sleep finally claimed me out of sheer exhaustion. The unraveling of my life began the day Karen showed up at my doorstep. I'll never forget her face, pale, drawn, weighed down by the secret she carried. She stood hesitantly in the doorway, her hands twisting nervously. "Melissa, I need to talk to you," she said, stepping inside. There was a heaviness in her voice, a reluctance as she tried to find the right words. "I saw John today. With Julia. They were coming out of a hotel together. I didn't want to believe it, but they kissed. Right there in the hallway." For a moment, it was as if the world stopped. I couldn't comprehend what she was telling me. John, my husband, the father of my unborn daughter. Julia, my best friend, the person I turned to when I needed comfort. My heart thundered in my chest as a surge of shock gave way to a torrent of anger and confusion. I bombarded Karen with questions that tumbled out in a rush. Where did this happen? When? Are you absolutely sure? But deep down, I already knew Karen wouldn't lie to me about something this serious. She was always the most honest, the most loyal. Her voice, the tremor in her hands, told me everything I needed to know. My reality was tilting, and I was struggling to find my footing. I clung to hope for a moment, desperate for an explanation that would untangle this knot of dread in my stomach. "What do you mean, a hotel? Why would they be in a hotel together? Are you completely sure?" My voice quaked, betraying my desperation. Karen's eyes filled with pity and sorrow. My cousins were visiting from out of town and staying at that hotel. I was on my way to their room and saw them. Melissa, I know what I saw. They didn't see me, but they came out of a room together. And then they kissed in the hallway. I'm so sorry, but you deserve to know the truth. Hearing her repeat it, so calmly, so certain, felt like a physical blow. My breath caught in my throat, my chest tightened, and before I knew it, tears were streaming down my face. I sank onto the couch, the weight of her words crushing me. It was as if my entire life was crumbling around me, piece by piece. The man I loved, the man I thought I knew, had betrayed not just our marriage, but the family we were supposed to build together. And Julia, she was more than a friend. She was my confidant, my chosen sister. How could she do this to me, especially now, when I was at my most vulnerable, carrying our child? The emotions came in waves: rage, humiliation, grief, shame, all tangled together until I could barely distinguish one from the next. Every shared memory felt tainted, every promise we'd made a cruel joke. I couldn't stop replaying the last year in my mind, searching for clues I'd missed, wondering if I'd been naive or simply disposable. The pain was overwhelming, pressing down on me from every side, and for the first time I truly understood what it meant to break. That night, I waited for John to come home, my mind spinning with questions and accusations. My stomach was a knot of dread and anticipation, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. When I heard his car in the driveway, I felt a surge of panic, but also a strange sense of resolve. He walked in as if it was any ordinary evening, set his keys on the counter, loosened his tie, the picture of routine. I wasn't going to let him slip past me, not this time. How long has it been, John? My voice was shaky, but there was steel behind it. He looked up, feigning confusion, his eyes narrowing as he realized I knew something. Then his face hardened, his jaw set. "What are you talking about?" he said, his tone cold and dismissive. "Don't play games with me," I shot back, anger rising to the surface. "Karen saw you. The hotel. With Julia. So go ahead, tell me the truth." He sneered, rolling his eyes, his voice dripping with contempt. "Karen's crazy. She probably misunderstood what she saw. Melissa, you always let your imagination run wild. There's nothing going on." But his words rang hollow, and he couldn't meet my gaze. The walls he'd built around himself were paper-thin, and I could see right through them. I clenched my fists, my body shaking with fury. "Don't you dare lie to me, John," I yelled, my voice breaking under the weight of my heartbreak. "Karen isn't crazy, and you damn well know it." In that moment, I realized something vital. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about finally seeing people for who they truly were, no matter how painful that truth might be. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my strength, and my future. And as the tears streamed down my face, I made a silent promise to myself and to Emma. We would not be defined by someone else's lies. We would write our own story, starting right then, in the ruins of what used to be. "She saw you with Julia, leaving that hotel room. She saw you kiss her. So don't stand there and act like I'm stupid." John threw his hands up, pacing the room like he was the one who'd been wronged, not me. His footsteps thudded against the hardwood, a frantic, desperate sound. "Melissa, you're blowing this way out of proportion," he snapped, his voice tight with annoyance. "Karen probably saw something innocent and twisted it in her head. Julia and I are just friends, that's all there is to it." But every word that tumbled out of his mouth sounded more hollow than the last. I could see the guilt flickering across his face, the way his eyes darted away from mine, unable to hold my gaze. He was crumbling, his facade slipping, and I realized he wasn't even trying to convince me anymore. He was trying to convince himself. I wondered if he could hear the tremor in his own voice, if he felt the weight of his lies pressing down on him the way they pressed down on me. While he kept rattling off excuses, his words ricocheting meaninglessly around the room, I felt a flutter in my stomach. "Emma." My hand drifted instinctively to my belly as she moved, A tiny, insistent reminder that she was here, that she was listening, that she was depending on me. In that moment, my anger softened into a sorrow so heavy it nearly buckled my knees. How could he do this to us? How could he betray me, betray her, before she even had a chance to know him? I pressed my palm against the curve of my belly, trying to draw strength from the life growing inside me. "Do you even care about us, John?" I asked, my voice quieter now, trembling on the edge of heartbreak. "Do you even care about your daughter? She's in here and she can feel this. She can feel me falling apart because of you." He glanced down at my stomach for barely a heartbeat, but his eyes were cold. His face shuttered and unreadable, as if he'd already made up his mind not to let himself feel anything. "This isn't about the baby," he said, his tone flat and dismissive. "Don't make this more dramatic than it needs to be." That's when it hit me, truly hit me. I was on my own. I felt the sting of tears threatening, but I blinked them back fiercely. I refused to let him see me cry, not after everything. "More dramatic?" I echoed, my voice raw and unsteady. "I'm 6 months pregnant, John. 6 months. And you're telling me it's not dramatic that you're sneaking around with my best friend? That you're tearing our family apart before our daughter's even born?" I could feel the anger rising, burning away the ache in my chest, leaving only a fierce determination in its place. John let out a heavy sigh, like I was the one making his life difficult, like I was some burden he'd been saddled with. "Melissa, you're blowing this out of proportion," he repeated, shaking his head in exasperation. "Julia and it just happened, okay? I can't help how I feel. Things haven't been right between us for a while. And honestly, look at yourself, you've changed." He gestured at me with a careless flick of his hand, his words sharp and cruel. "I'm not attracted to you anymore, Melissa. I'm sorry, but it's true." He scoffed, his lips curling in contempt. "God, Melissa, do you even hear yourself? You've been nothing but a whiny, overgrown baby since you got pregnant. Every single day it's something. Your back hurts, your feet are swollen, you're exhausted. I get it, you're pregnant, but you act like you're the first woman in history to ever have a baby. It's honestly pathetic." His gaze swept over me, lingering with open disgust. "And let's not even talk about how you look. You're huge. Seriously, Melissa, you're starting to look like a damn elephant waddling around this house. It's embarrassing. You don't even try anymore. Just those stained sweatpants and your greasy hair twisted up in that ugly bun. Julia's gorgeous. She cares about herself, she's fun and exciting. You're just a moody, needy mess, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise." He glared at me, his words hanging in the air like a cloud of poison, suffocating me. I stood there, frozen, numb, unable to process the cruelty of what he'd just said. I'd braced myself for lies, for denial, for empty apologies, but not for this. Not for him to take everything I was feeling and twist it into something shameful, something ugly. The man I loved, the man who'd once held me close and promised to protect me, was now the one tearing me down, piece by piece, until nothing was left. My throat closed up, and I struggled to breathe past the ache. I could feel tears threatening again, scorching my eyes, but I forced them back. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me broken, not now. "You don't even care," I whispered, my voice barely more than a breath. "Not about me, not about Emma, not about anything we built together." He just shrugged, cold and indifferent. "I've moved on, Melissa. Maybe you should too." Those words landed with a finality that knocked the air out of me. In that instant I saw him for what he really was. The man I'd loved was gone, replaced by a stranger who looked at me with empty eyes. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the words he'd spat at me echoing endlessly in my head. Every room in that house felt like it was closing in, the memories pressing down on me from all sides. Our laughter, our arguments, the whispered promises in the dark. Now they felt like ghosts haunting the ruins of a life I'd thought was real. By morning I knew what I had to do. I packed what I could fit into a few battered suitcases, the things that mattered, the things I needed for Emma, and left the rest behind. I barely looked around as I closed the door, My heart so heavy I thought I might collapse before I reached the car. A while back, my mom had offered to let me stay with her during the pregnancy, just in case I ever needed help. I hadn't wanted to admit I might, but now I clung to that offer like a lifeline. I drove through quiet, gray streets, the world outside blurred by tears I refused to shed. When I finally pulled into her driveway, she was already waiting for me at the door, arms open wide, her face etched with worry and love. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, her voice soft and warm, and the moment she folded me into her embrace, I shattered. I sobbed into her shoulder, clinging to her like a child, letting out all the hurt and anger I'd been holding inside. "It's going to be okay, Melissa," she whispered, smoothing my hair and rocking me gently. "You and Emma, you're both going to be okay. I'm here. We'll get through this together, I promise." And as I clung to her, feeling the steady beat of her heart, I realized she was right. For the first time in what felt like forever, I believed just for a moment that maybe, somehow, we would be okay. That I could build something new for Emma and me, no matter how much had been broken. It felt like I hadn't felt safe in ages, as though the very idea of safety was some distant memory, something I'd only ever read about or dreamed of. Even at my mom's house, where the doors were always locked and the curtains drawn against the world, I was still in pieces. But at least those pieces were sheltered, and for the first time in so long, I could breathe without feeling like I was waiting for the next blow. Life there was quieter, the kind of quiet that pressed in on you, almost suffocating on the days when the past seemed too heavy to bear. My mom did everything she could to help, trying to piece me back together in her own gentle way, even if she didn't always know how. She'd cook my favorite meals, mac and cheese the way I liked it, grilled cheese with the crusts cut off, blueberry pancakes on the weekends. She'd sit with me at night, sometimes talking about silly things like the neighbors or the weather, careful never to bring up John. Other times, she'd just hold my hand in silence, the two of us trying to fill the emptiness with simple presence. But the silence, when it came, was almost too much. When Mom wasn't around, the house felt cavernous, every clock tick echoing through the halls. I'd find myself wandering into the spare room, the one I'd turned into a makeshift nursery. There I'd spend hours folding and refolding Emma's tiny clothes, those impossibly small onesies and socks, trying to imagine the day I'd finally meet her. I'd arrange her stuffed animals on the shelf, then rearrange them again, as if getting the order right might make everything else fall into place. Sometimes I'd stand by the window, holding a tiny hat or blanket, staring into the backyard as dusk settled, wondering how I was supposed to raise a child on my own. The weight of it pressed down on me, making me feel older, more fragile, and yet somehow more determined. Every so often I'd grab my phone, heart pounding with this wild urge to call John. I wanted answers. I wanted to yell, to cry, to make him hear just how much he'd hurt us. There were times I'd type out long, furious messages, thumbs trembling, only to delete them before hitting send. What was the point? He'd already made himself clear, already shown me exactly where his priorities lay. It wasn't me, and it certainly wasn't our daughter. Each time I stopped myself, it was another small victory, proof that I didn't need to give him any more of my energy. Instead, I poured every bit of myself into Emma, even before she was born. She was the reason I got out of bed in the morning, the reason I tried to eat well, to walk around the block, to keep moving forward. I refused to let John's absence be the thing that broke me completely. I decided, quietly, stubbornly, that I would be enough for her, even if I was all she ever had. As the weeks passed, John's presence faded like a photograph left out in the sun. No calls, no texts, nothing but silence. It was as if he'd erased us from his life, like we'd been a temporary inconvenience he could simply walk away from. At first, I checked my phone constantly, torn between hope and dread every time it buzzed. But as the days stretched into weeks, and then into months, the silence became its own answer. Eventually I stopped checking. I told myself it was for the best. No more reminders of what I'd lost. No more waiting for a man who'd already made his choice. Just me and the quiet, which, in its own way, started to feel like freedom. It was strange, though, how someone who had been the center of my world could vanish so completely. 4 years John had been there. His laugh in the kitchen, his shoes by the door, his hand warm in mine at night. Now there was only absence, a ghost that haunted the corners of my memory. I packed away every photo, every love letter, every souvenir of the life we'd shared. I put it all in a box and shoved it into the deepest corner of the closet, as if hiding the evidence could erase the pain. Sometimes I'd find myself thinking about him, not with longing, but with disbelief. How could someone choose to disappear from their own child's life before she'd even drawn her first breath? His absence was everywhere, woven through the smallest moments: doctor's appointments, baby kicks, midnight fears. It was a hollow echo, a reminder of what Emma and I would never have. The months crawled by, each one heavier than the last. Pregnancy was harder than I'd ever imagined. My body ached constantly, sleep came in fits and starts, and the loneliness was a physical thing, gnawing at me from the inside out. My mom saved me in more ways than I could name. She drove me to appointments, rubbed my back when the cramps were bad, whispered encouragement on the days I couldn't stop crying. But there were still nights when I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, tears running into my hair as I wondered how my life had ended up here. I mourned the life I'd imagined for Emma. The family dinners, the bedtime stories with two voices, the security of knowing both her parents loved her. Losing that dream hurt almost as much as losing John himself. But every time I felt her kick or saw her tiny heartbeat on the ultrasound, I remembered why I couldn't give in. She was the good thing, the light breaking through all the darkness. She was the reason I had to keep going. When Emma finally arrived, it was as if the world shifted on its axis. The pain, the fear, the months of uncertainty, all of it faded the moment I saw her. I'll never forget the first time I held her, her skin soft and warm, her tiny fingers curling instinctively around mine. A huge wave of love crashed over me, so fierce and undeniable I could barely breathe. For the first time in months, I didn't feel broken. I felt whole, as if all those shattered pieces had come together to make something new and strong. John wasn't there. He hadn't even called. But in that moment I didn't care. Emma was here and she was perfect. She was mine. My beautiful, precious girl, worth every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of heartbreak that had brought us here. The first weeks with her were a whirlwind. Endless feedings, diaper changes, bleary-eyed nights that bled into morning. I was exhausted and terrified and happier than I'd ever been. Emma's eyes, wide and curious, seemed to take in everything. When she looked at me, it was like she saw the real me. Not the broken shell I'd been, but the mother I was becoming. My mom was there every step of the way, rocking Emma to sleep, showing me how to swaddle her, making sure I ate and showered. But I tried to do as much as I could myself. I needed to prove, if only to myself, that I could do this. That I could be enough for my daughter. Sometimes I wondered if I was also trying to prove it to John, wherever he was, but I pushed the thought away. He was gone and I didn't need him. Still, the loneliness was a shadow, always lurking. At the grocery store, I'd see dads laughing with their kids or pushing strollers, and my heart would twist. Sometimes friends would text about their partners helping with night feeds or diaper changes, and I'd feel that old ache, sharp and insistent. But then Emma would smile at me, a gummy, perfect smile, or she'd coo and reach for my face, and the world would narrow to just the two of us. She was my universe, and in her eyes I saw everything I needed. After a few weeks, as the fog of new motherhood began to lift, I started to crave a little bit of the outside world. My mom offered to watch Emma, insisting I needed a break. Reluctantly, I agreed, even though the thought of leaving my daughter made my heart race. I went to the mall, the first time I'd been alone since before Emma was born. It felt strange and exhilarating at once, walking through those bright, bustling halls, anonymous among strangers. I wandered aimlessly, stopping to browse in baby stores, picking out a couple of soft outfits for Emma. For a moment I felt almost normal again, like maybe I was finding my way back to myself. Then I heard my name. Melissa. The sound cut through the noise, and my heart dropped into my stomach. I turned and there she was, Julia. She looked completely different than I remembered. Her skin pale, eyes red and swollen, her hair pulled back in a messy knot. There was no hiding the small swell of her belly, the evidence of her own story unfolding. Before I could even process what I was seeing, Julia rushed up to me, her voice trembling. "Melissa, I'm so sorry," she blurted out, tears streaming down her face as she grabbed my arm. She was crying so hard her whole body shook. I just stood there, frozen, every muscle tensed as memories crashed over me. Julia, the woman whose choices had detonated my life, who had taken John and shattered everything I thought I knew, was right in front of me, sobbing like a lost child. She looked nothing like the poised, confident woman I remembered. For a long moment, all I could do was stare at her, the past and present colliding in a way that made it hard to breathe. As she clung to me, apologizing over and over, I realized something I hadn't before. She was just as broken as I'd been. We were both standing in the ruins of the life we'd imagined, trying to find a way forward. And as I looked at her, I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not even pity, but a kind of weary understanding. We'd both lost something. We were both, in our own ways, starting over. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. I recognized Julia the instant our eyes met, though she was a shadow of the girl I used to know. Her hair hung limp, her posture caved in, and her hands trembled as she tried to compose herself, dabbing at her blotchy face with a crumpled tissue. The confident, sharp-witted Julia from years ago was gone, replaced by someone hollowed out by regret. "I know I'm the last person you want to see," she choked out, breath hitching as her words tumbled over themselves. "But I need to tell you everything." My heart hammered in my chest, a tidal wave of memories and anger rising inside me. I waited, barely breathing, for her to continue. "John left me," she managed, voice splintering. "He lost his job a few months after we got together, and it all fell apart. He started gambling, drinking, staying out all night. I tried to help him, but he wouldn't listen. When I told him I was pregnant, he just left, packed his things and walked out. He said he couldn't handle it." Julia's shoulders shook, her whole body racked with sobs. "I don't know what to do, Melissa. I'm so sorry for everything I did to you. You didn't deserve any of it. I was so selfish, so cruel." She broke down completely, right there in the middle of the mall, her pain spilling out for all to see. People slowed as they walked past, some glancing over with curiosity or pity, but I barely noticed. I stood rooted to the spot, my mind a storm of conflicting emotions: outrage, vindication, sadness. For years I'd replayed the past in my mind, imagining Julia's remorse, picturing her apologizing, wishing for a moment just like this where she would finally acknowledge the pain she'd caused. Now that it was happening, though, everything felt hollow. The satisfaction I thought I'd feel, the sense of justice or closure, never arrived. I was empty, numb, watching her unravel. She clutched my arm, desperate, her voice ragged. "Please, Melissa. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need it. I ruined everything between us. I wish I could go back, but I can't. Please, I'm begging you. I need your forgiveness more than anything." Her words hung in the air, raw and pleading. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even move. I just stared at her, my mind racing with memories of the betrayal, the loneliness, the endless questions of why I hadn't been enough. I realized, with a strange clarity, that her apology changed nothing. I felt only the ache of old wounds, mixed with a deep, weary pity. For her, for myself, for all that we'd lost. At that moment, I saw Julia not as the villain of my story, but as a broken person, lost in her own suffering. I looked at her one last time, taking in her tear-streaked face, and then I turned away. I left her standing alone in the center of the mall, surrounded by strangers, her pain echoing behind me. Maybe that was all the closure I'd ever get. When I reached home, the surrealness of the day only deepened. There, slumped on my front steps, was John. At first, I wondered if exhaustion was making me see things. He looked almost unrecognizable, hair unkempt, face gaunt and unshaven, clothes rumpled and stained, the sour tang of alcohol floating in the air between us. He seemed to have aged years in a matter of months. He looked up at me, eyes bloodshot and rimmed with red. "Melissa," he muttered, struggling to get to his feet. I needed to see you. A cold fury surged through me. After everything he'd done, after all the nights I'd spent alone, afraid and overwhelmed. He thought he could just show up here? My body tensed, every muscle ready to push him away. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice sharp and brittle. He leaned heavily against the doorframe, his movements clumsy. I'm sorry, he slurred, voice cracking. I love you, Melissa. I love Emma. Please let me come back. I'll fix everything, I swear. His words spilled out, desperate and pathetic, but I felt only revulsion. The man I had once adored, the person I had trusted with my heart and my future, was now a stranger I barely recognized. Sorry, I repeated, my disbelief etched in every syllable. You're sorry. You walked out on me, on us, without even looking back. Now you show up here, reeking of whiskey, talking about love and second chances. He ran a trembling hand through his hair, tears spilling down his cheeks. I know, Melissa. I know I ruined everything. I lost you, I lost Emma, my job, my money. I lost myself. I haven't slept in weeks. All I do is think about how much I've lost and how much you and Emma mean to me. Please, please just let me try to make it up to you. Let me be a father to Emma. I'll do anything. I looked at him, my heart pounding. For a long, painful moment, I remembered the good days. The laughter, the promises, the excitement of building a life together. I remembered the first time he held my hand, the first time he told me he loved me, the way he'd pressed his palm against my stomach when Emma kicked for the first time. But all of that was gone. In its place was a mountain of hurt and disappointment, 1,000 lonely nights and 100 unanswered questions. You love us. My voice was barely more than a whisper, trembling with the weight of the past. Where was that love when I was 6 months pregnant and you disappeared? Where was it when I gave birth alone, when I brought Emma home and sat up every night wondering how I'd do this by myself? You abandoned us, John. You don't get to come back now and ask for forgiveness as if it's that simple. He broke down then, sobbing so quietly it was almost a whisper. I saw for the first time just how much he had lost. Not just us but himself. The man I had built my future around was gone, replaced by someone haunted by regret. For a moment, I almost pitied him. But I knew pity couldn't fix what he'd broken. I know, he whispered, voice hoarse. I know I don't deserve anything. But I have to try. Can change. Please just let me see Emma. Let me try to be her father. A lump rose in my throat, but I forced myself to stay strong. I remembered every moment of fear and heartbreak, every time I'd told myself I would not be destroyed by him. I had survived. I had rebuilt. And I would not let him drag me back into that darkness. No, John, I said, my words firm, each one a stone in a wall I had to build. You're not part of my life anymore. Emma and I, we're better off without you. You made your choice, and you have to live with it. His shoulders crumpled, his sobs growing louder, but I steeled myself. I stepped past him, unlocked the door, and closed it quietly behind me, the finality of the gesture echoing in the silence. Inside, I slumped against the door, letting the weight of the day settle over me. In a single afternoon, the two people who had nearly shattered my life had both come back, each carrying the consequences of their own choices, each pleading for something I could no longer give. For so long, I'd imagined that their apologies would heal me, would finally close the old wounds. But now I realized that forgiveness wasn't something they could ask for. It was something I had to give myself. And as I stood in the quiet of my home, Emma's laughter drifting from her bedroom, I knew I was finally ready to move on, free from the shadows of the past. I didn't need to lift a finger. Everything that's happening to them now is a consequence of their own actions. Their selfishness, the web of lies they spun, all the choices that tore our lives apart over a year ago. I remember every detail, every raw emotion. The disbelief when the truth first came out, the ache of betrayal settling into my bones, the endless nights I spent lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I would ever rebuild and raise Emma on my own. Sometimes I wondered if the pain would ever subside, if I'd ever feel whole again. But through all of that I kept going. I refused to let their mistakes define me or cast a shadow over my daughter's life. I poured every bit of my energy into Emma and into rediscovering myself. There were moments of doubt, but I learned to lean on the small joys. Her laughter, her curiosity, the way she would reach for my hand when she was scared. Piece by piece I started to rebuild. I realized I was stronger than I thought, that I could create a life for us both that was full of hope and possibility, even after so much had been taken away. Now looking back, I see how far I've come. The people who once tried to break me are trapped in the chaos they created, unable to escape the consequences of their own decisions. And here I am, still standing, no more than that. I'm thriving. I found resilience I never knew I had, and I refused to let bitterness take root in my heart. Instead, I focused on building something better, something lasting for Emma and for myself. Tonight, as I quietly climbed the stairs and peeked into Emma's room, a sense of peace settled over me. She slept soundly, her little face serene in the soft glow of her nightlight, completely unaware of the storms we'd weathered together. I bent down to kiss her forehead, and in that moment, a wave of gratitude and fierce love washed over me, reminding me what truly matters. She is my purpose, my anchor, and my greatest joy. This is my life now, a life rebuilt from the ashes, shaped by pain but also by hope and determination. I know there will be challenges ahead, but I also know I have the strength to face them. For Emma, and for myself, I will keep moving forward. Honestly, I can see now that the future is bright, and it's going to be beautiful. If you connected with this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really makes a difference and helps us continue sharing stories like this one. Stay tuned for more. I'd love to have you with us on this journey. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time.